Hello there and welcome. So today I'd like to have a little bit of a chat about the upcoming ingress of Pluto into Aquarius. You may have seen some of my previous videos where I talked about Saturn moving into Pisces, but today I'd like to focus on Pluto. So this year will be quite a significant year for planetary movements, as two of the bigger, heavier hitters of the planetary bodies are moving into different signs. Usually I would focus on the traditional planets. Pluto is not a traditional planet, but it is a generational planet, and its effects can be quite long-lasting. So in 2008, Pluto moved into Capricorn, and it was in that time that we had experienced some major financial upheavals. This year, Pluto moves into Aquarius around the 24th of March, shortly following the vernal equinox. The vernal equinox is quite an important factor within this chart reading, as the vernal equinox in and of itself represents the shifting of cycles and the beginning of the seasonal year. So this chart I have here is for the day that Pluto first moves into Aquarius. And you'll notice in this chart, Pluto is placed within the 8th house. So Pluto is concerning itself with matters of death, loss, inheritance, and other people's money, debts, and taxes. Excuse me if I'm looking down, I'm just reading my notes. Pluto itself is a symbol of death and rebirth. It's symbolic of that destruction that's required in order for something new to be built. Similar to that, like a caterpillar when it goes into its cocoon to become a butterfly. While Aquarius is a symbol of man. It's symbolic of the waters of consciousness that are trickled down from the heavens to help enlighten man to become his highest potential self. So with this placement, what we might experience is throughout the transit of Pluto through Aquarius is this sensation of the influx of change in consciousness that is inherited from celestial places. So Pluto here is indicative that the cycles of death and loss will be seen to have a huge influential impact over the psyche of humanity. In particular, death rates and public mortality rates and morticians will be of significant interest. So the Sun in this chart is at 3 degrees of Aries. The Sun is exalted in Aries, and in this particular chart is ruling the 3rd house. So on the mundane level, the 3rd house is connected to issues of media and propaganda, free speech, and prosecutions and legal matters, which because the Sun is exalted, these matters will be brought to the forefront and elevated for all to see. And there may also be something to do with transportation and education involved here too. So the Sun being placed in the 10th house up the top there provides some merits for success and notoriety, especially with the fact that Jupiter is also in the 10th house, although it's on the cusp, sort of in the 11th as well. So this alludes to the idea that there'll be some kind of riches and awards and honours in the public eye pertaining to the matters of media, propaganda, prosecutions. The Sun is also a natural ruler of gold, and being that it's up in the top part of the chart, it's in the public arena, so it's important to the public. Another natural rulership of the Sun is the King. So it's possible we may see a rebirth of the King, potentially new leadership on the horizon. So the Moon in this chart is also exalted, being placed in Taurus. The Moon is in conjunction with the North Node, and they're both placed in the 11th house of beneficiaries, friendship, good fortune, acquaintances, the local community, and places of safety and rest. It's a house of hope and freedom. The Moon there with the North Node suggests that there's a fateful disposition to a certain direction. You know, it's like we're all being dragged towards this idea of freedom and hope and the chance to recover. So while the sun is gold, the moon is silver. And remembering that an exaltation means that this is being pushed to the forefront and elevated of importance. So the moon in this chart is ruling the second house, which speaks of income and assets, which seems to me that individual income or assets is going to be elevated and drawn into this place of good opportunities and hope and rest and recovery. So the moon is at 3 degrees of Taurus and the sun is at 3 degrees of Aries. This aspect is called a parallel, essentially like a conjunction. So it would be almost as if it's a new moon when the moon's dark, bringing together gold and silver. Also another indication of a new cycle beginning. It's also important to note that the moon is also the masses and the people. It's the soul, it's the consciousness. So the masses of the people are combining with the king, the ruler, to bring us forward and exalt us. So the combination of the balsamic moon, the equinox, and the sun-moon conjunction through that parallel really shows that there's something new starting. There's a whole new way of being, from communication, from transactions, from the way we earn our money, and systems that are influenced by gold and silver. So because Pluto is sextiling, so making that blue harmonious aspect to the sun, it's receiving these changes quite well and is ready and easily able to adapt to them. Whereas the square from Pluto to the moon suggests that there's a bit of challenge and difficulty there. So not everyone's probably going to be able to accept the changes of the new systems, and also a lot of the information that's coming through from the mortality rates and from morticians may not be easy to cope with either. Also, with Pluto being in the 8th house there, we may also see massive changes to the way that taxes and debts are dealt with. And we may even see them abolished entirely. So to sum it all up and try to make it as simple as possible, the picture that I'm getting from this chart and this ingress, I believe we will see the collapse of the old system and a switch to the new financial system of gold and silver-backed currencies. Certain leaders may be ousted through proper lawful avenues and prosecutions successfully undertaken. The death of the old fiat system, new leaders implemented. And for some people, you know, this may be quite easy for them to cope with. They may be expecting it and happy for it, while others may feel isolated and excluded. With some of the biggest things, some of the biggest challenges they're facing is the understanding of death tolls and the public mortalities that have taken place. I'd also like to point out that 2 days after Pluto ingresses into Aquarius, Mars will move into Cancer. So on a mundane level, Mars is symbolic of the military and the police and anything that is masculine. Mars in Cancer is in its fall. So this energy might see the military and police start to act in a more caring way in the way they undertake their operations, seeming to be a bit more melancholy, as the waters of Cancer dampening the fiery